Greetings gamers, I'm Anto and I've been playing tabletop games for almost 20 years now, and on this channel I'm all about helping you be a better dungeon master and build better worlds. Today we're going to be taking a look at LegendKeeper, the world building app that I did a review on when it first came out last year. In my initial overview and review of LegendKeeper, I said that the core functionality was really strong, but it was missing a lot of the features that I personally need to be able to run my game. Well, since the Fates update a few weeks ago, a lot has changed on LegendKeeper, so I thought it was high time that I took another look at it and see whether or not it is finally at a stage where I could personally use it as my full-time digital DM resource. So let's dive in and I'll show you how to use LegendKeeper and how I use it as a dungeon master. This is going to be a really chunky video, so timestamps for absolutely everything are going to be in the video play bar, so you can click around and find the section that you're looking for. I'll also put an FAQ pinned in the top comment, also with a link to the LegendKeeper Discord, so if you have questions that I can't answer, the community in the comments can't answer, you can go to that Discord to get your answers. So let's dive straight into it. So when you first load into LegendKeeper, you're going to be presented with this screen, which is the splash screen that you get the very first time you come in. It's going to ask you to create a new project. If this is your first time, you'll hit this new project button and give your world a title. I've already done that for today and we're going to be using the LegendKeeper tutorial. So I click on that. Once you've made your project, this is the screen you're going to get. It's going to prompt you to add a map. Now, most of LegendKeeper's functionality is built around this atlas, this map, and LegendKeeper works really well for games where you're using a map. If you're the kind of dungeon master that doesn't use any maps, LegendKeeper will still be useful for you, but it loses a lot of the really strong functionality that you would choose it for. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to add a map here, and you can see that you get a couple of different preloaded maps from the shared LegendKeeper world, but I'm just going to click here and choose my file to add my map. So I've chosen to go with the map of Ashk for this example. So you can see that once it's loaded in, you get this atlas map. It's almost like Google Maps. You can zoom in, you can use the middle mouse wheel to pan around. You can see that the quality isn't very good right away. The map is just loading in, but once it's loaded in properly, everything will be nice and sharp. So before we dive into the nitty-gritty of LegendKeeper, I just want to run through a couple of the general settings. Up top left here, you can select the project that you're working on by clicking the LegendKeeper logo, and it will give you the list of all the projects you're involved in. This is where you can create a new project and where you can select the one you want to work on. So we'll go back to our tutorial. Down the bottom left here, we've got two buttons. We've got the account settings button. If we click that, it brings up this window. This will let you change your theme between dark and light. I personally prefer dark. I find light to be a bit too bright on the eyes. You can also change your display name, your email address, and your avatar. In the project settings, you can rename your world and you can export your entire world into a HTML doc. This is really handy and is an option I know a lot of people really appreciate, because there is always a worry that a service like this or any service isn't going to be around forever. So if you put all this work into building your world, you want to be able to keep a copy of it. So being able to export that as a HTML that will keep all of your header values and everything like that intact is really nice. Next, we've got the users and roles where you can invite other people to your project. I'll talk more on that in a little bit. Then we've got our global permissions for what those people can see, the trash to be able to recover items that you've deleted, and then the advanced area. The advanced area is where you can rebuild your search index. Over on the top right here, we've got a little pulse monitor and 3 dots. The pulse monitor shows all the activity that's been going on. So as an admin, you can see everything that all the other users of your project have been doing. This is really handy if you're building a shared world or you want to know what people have been doing. So you can do it by the entire project, or for the individual page. That's a coming soon feature, but that'll be really handy for micro changes. Then clicking the three dots, you can go to the wiki for your atlas, or you have the option to replace the map. So if I click that, I could swap this map out for an updated version. And the nice thing about that is that any pins we place on this map stay where they are. So if I have another map that's exactly the same, but without any of the text, I could replace that map and all my pins would stay in the same place. Down at the bottom right, we've got a little question mark that has got the announcements. That's upcoming things that have changed. You've got the option for a feedback form, so if there's things you'd like to see, you can submit that. And then there's a direct link to the Discord server so that you can get help if you've got any problems. You've also got the sizing options for your map. I prefer to just use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out, but you can see you can go in really close or come out really far. So this atlas supports, I believe, up to 100 by 100 megabyte maps. It supports really massive maps. So you're very unlikely to have a map that you're gonna struggle to get into LegendKeeper. So next, let's talk about one of the really big benefits of LegendKeeper, and that's being able to share information with your players. So if I go back down here to the account settings and click on users and roles, you can see I've got the option to invite a friend. I believe everyone gets 50 invite codes, so you can invite all of your players or your friends to come and collaborate with you on your world and get access to the LegendKeeper beta without them having to pledge on Patreon as well. It's a really nice feature. It's a great thing to explode the community and really grow that nice and quickly. So you can see here I've got myself and I've made a test member. Now I can change what that test member can see by going into permissions. So you can see here we've got a couple different options. Members can see articles, members can upload maps, and members can upload images. Now, if you are a dungeon master and you're running a world and you just want to present some information to your players, you don't necessarily want them to be able to add anything of their own, you keep all of these unticked. If you are running more of a West Marches style game and you have multiple DMs and then a lot of players, you can have two tiers. You can have members and admin. So you have all your DMs be admin. They're going to be able to create maps, articles, add new things, and then all the members, who are your players, will only be able to see those things that they are given access to. I think for West Marches style games especially, these permission systems and the Atlas are going to make it incredibly easy to run a West Marches game. So let's dive in and start creating some articles. First thing we're going to do is going to zoom in here to Azim, and then I'm going to right click and click new pin. Now this will bring up a new little window that allows me either to link to an existing article or to create a new article. So I'm going to create a new article. I'm going to call it Azim. And then we're going to change the icon to be some coins. And then we're going to change the pin style. And you can see here, if I click on the pin style, we've got a couple of different shapes. So we can change what the pin looks like. I'm going to go with a flag. I'm going to choose a nice orange color. And then we can also hide the icon so we can give some visual hierarchy on the map. So what I like to do is for all my cities, I have big icons that show the glyphs, the little coin symbol or whatever it is. And then all the little towns and points of interest, I hide those icons so that they're small, so that they clearly aren't as important visually as the big city-states. But we'll go ahead, we'll click confirm, and then we need to choose where this article is going to go. So at the minute, all we have is the LegendKeeper tutorial, just the main page. So we're just going to go ahead and click create article and pin. So it'll drop a pin there on Azim. You can see I can zoom out, and that pin will get bigger and bigger and bigger. To stop that from happening, we need to come down here to the left where it says new pin and click on these little more options tools. To do that, we can click on pin dragging and pin clustering. So if I were to click pin clustering on, if I had a lot of different pins in this region, as I zoomed out, it would replace all of the pins and just give me a number instead. But let's turn that off for now, zoom back into Azim, and we're going to click on it. and what we get is this sidebar. Now this sidebar is the article for a zine. This will show all the information that you have in an article. We don't have any information there. So what we need to do is go up here, click on edit article, and it will bring up this pop-up. This window is going to be where you spend most of your time world building in LegendKeeper. And there are a couple of different important things to know when you're working in this text editor. The first thing that you want to know is currently the formatting options aren't super robust. There are headings of different values, so heading 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can add a bunch of different rigid options, but you don't have full flexibility over the page like you do in something in OneNote, for example. And that might be a reason not to jump over to LegendKeeper right away. I know previous to the Fates update, that was one of the big reasons I didn't jump straight into LegendKeeper, because I like that flexibility of being able to place a lot of things on a page in OneNote. But there are a couple of ways around that that we will go over. First, we're going to start off on the sidebar here. You can see that there are several different options. If we click at the top, we can add an image. Now that adds an image to the top right of the screen. So I've got a map for a zine already loaded in that I'm going to click here. And once it loads, it's going to put the map for a zine up here in the top right, just like that. So I can see a representation of the article. So if the article was a person, you could put their portrait there. If it's a location, you could put a map. You could put some sort of flavor image to give you a sense of the tone of the place, all those kinds of things. The next thing I can do is I can add a map. So if I click on add map, I can upload a new map, and just like the atlas, and what that allows me to do once the map is uploaded, when I click on my pin, you can see up here next to the edit article button, I've got a go to map button. Click that and it loads in my new map for a zine, and this works exactly the same as the atlas. I can drop in pins, I can change attributes, and in the future there will be more functionality coming to this atlas, so I'll be able to measure distances, all those kinds of things. To get back to the main atlas, you go up here and you can see that it's got the article destination. Click on LegendKeeper tutorial or whatever your world is called, and it'll bring you back to your main map. Or you can click on the little home button, which will do the same. So we're going to go back into the edit article here, and we're going to carry on adding properties. So we've added an image, we've added a map. Next up, we've got tags. Now tags are a really great system for organizing your content. LegendKeeper's got a pretty robust search tool, but tags really help just to pick things out even quicker. So I'm going to add a couple tags here, and I'm going to add city state, and I'm going to add a zine. So if I later want to find out information about some of the city-states or about a zine, I can search for those and it will bring this article above others. And then finally, we've got the properties. So if I click on that, we've got two different options. We've got mentioned in and we've got pin appearance. Pin appearance is just like when we were setting up the pin for this location. It allows us to change the color, the shape, the icon, all of that stuff. But mentioned in shows all the articles that this location has been tagged in. There's a really strong tagging system in LegendKeeper, and that will mention all of the articles that this location has been mentioned in via that tagging system. And it's a really powerful tool to be able to go, right, I know I've got an NPC, for example. Where have the players met this NPC? Well, I click the mentioned in, and anytime you've referenced an interaction with that NPC or anything like that, it will pull it up. It makes searching for very specific content really easy. So then we want to go ahead and we want to add some information into this article. So we click over here and you can see that it says start typing here. Use / to access the quick menu and @ to mention other articles in your wiki. Those two keys are the most important in the entire app. So we'll start off with the / menu. Now the / menu is how you unlock almost everything in LegendKeeper. So if I go ahead and hit /, you can see I get a context menu. And this has got a whole bunch of different options. Right at the top, it's got help to give you help on all the keyboard shortcuts and things like that, which is great. But we're going to skip over that and go down each of the others. First off, we've got mention. That allows you to create an internal hyperlink between two articles in your wiki. That's really handy if you have two locations that you want to reference, different NPCs, items, anything, you name it, you can tag another article. Next, we have the option to create a new article whilst working on a new article. So let's say I want to mention that Azim contains the Great Bazaar. So I click article and I name the article the Great Bazaar. I can choose the parent to be Azim. I can change the icon if I want to, and then I can just insert the link, and that creates the Great Bazaar as an article. Next up, we have the option to insert an image, just like we did with the map of Azim up in the top right of our article. You can insert basically any image you want. So let's grab an image here, and we will go with this one here. This is one of the squares near the Great Bazaar in Azim, near the Tamim headquarters. So we'll grab that image. And when we click on it, we've got a couple of different options down here. You can see we can justify it in different ways, and we can have it wrap with our text. We can also link the image to something else and provide alternate text. All great options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this image to wrap on the right, and you can see that it will resize it in such a way that I can now go ahead and start typing things, and the image will stay over there on the right. Next up, we have the link option. You can paste in a link to a different site and choose what text to display, which is really handy. Then we have the expand menu. Now, I really like the expand menu because it gives you a lot of options in the space. If I go ahead and insert and expand, you can see it puts in this little box and you can give it a title. So we will call this Human Names. And then what I can do is I can add in a bunch of human names. And if I click on the little arrow, it collapses it. It allows you to stack a lot of information into a page and have it ready and available, but not take up a load of visual space when you're looking and trying to find something. And I'll show you later on how I use that in my DM screen to maximize my space. If you want to delete any of these sections, most of them that have a box have this little delete icon. You click that and it gets rid of it straight away. So next up, we have the table option. I click that, it will put in a table. Tables in LegendKeeper still aren't fully formed, and there are still some options that I would personally really like to see, such as being able to shade the tables. That would be really nice, but they are much better than they used to be, and they are still really usable. So you can see here, I've got options to add new columns. I've got options over on the left to add new rows. I can merge two different cells by highlighting them, clicking this little drop down arrow and click merge cells, and then I can split those up again. I can highlight a column and delete it. I can highlight a row and delete it. And then you've got a bunch of different options for tables. So you've got header rows, header columns, things like that. So if we click on header row, and then you can add in your header, so header 1, header 2, and you can also highlight those and you get another context menu. This is the second context menu that you get within the editor, and it's always related to the text. So you can change what heading it is, which will port over to your HTML export, which is really nice. So if I make this heading 1, it will keep that when you export, and then if you import that HTML into something else, it will carry that over again. You can bold, italicize, underline, add block quotes to things. So if I grab this second header and block quote it, you can see it puts a block around it. That's not something I use super often, but it is always nice to have another way to distinguish information on the page. And then you can link specific text to an external site. You can link specific text to an article, either by linking it to an existing one or creating an article. And then you can cut out a section and move that to a new article. That is really handy because when I'm world building, one of the ways that I do it is I will create a page for Azim. And to start with, I'll put absolutely everything on that page while I'm just forming ideas. But then as those ideas grow and get too big for one page, I might want to separate things out. So I might have put a load of information on the Great Bazaar on my main Azim page, and I then want to move that. So I can highlight the section of text and cut it out to a new article. And I don't have to retype it, copy and paste it, it's just done. It's really handy. And then we've got a couple more options here for strike through, add in superscript and subscript texts, and then clearing all formatting. One thing that isn't immediately evident is when you're in a table or in some of the other options, you don't seem to be able to click underneath them to carry on typing. To get around this, click in the last cell of your table and just press the down arrow, and that will break out of it. That isn't super obvious how to do straight away, so just down arrow, it'll save you a lot of headaches. Then next up in our slash list, we have layouts. Layouts are personally my favorite element of the latest Fates update because they allow you a lot more flexibility with how you arrange information on your page. So I'll click on layout, and you can see it adds 2 boxes. What this essentially does is split the page in 2, and you can change how you have it. You can do 2, 3 columns. You can give columns more weight. So I can do a wiki style column where I put an image in the left. Let's throw up an image of Azim here, a little image of Azim, and then I can add some text. This is an example paragraph. And I can change my text to be heading 1, and I can start building that wiki looking page using the layouts. It's also really useful for making your DM screen, and I'm going to cover that in depth later in the video. There's a timestamp below, so if that's what you're interested in, click that now, head over there, because I'm going to be going through my DM screen in LegendKeeper. Again, when you want to get out of this, you need to click in the last area and press the down arrow. You'll see that it's got a flashing cursor here, so I just enter and I can start typing again. So next up we have the divider. That allows you to just put a simple line between 2 blocks and divide your content up. Then we've got bullet lists and numbered lists. They are exactly what they say. So you click a numbered list and you can just add a list of items, fairly self-explanatory. Then we have a to-do item. Now, the to-do items are related to the tags, or at least they used to be. It used to be whenever you created an article, it would mark it as to-do, which meant that until you removed that property, you could see a list of all the articles that you needed to do work on. That's not how I personally use it, but that is how you can use it, and it is really handy. So if you grab to-do, it will give you this checklist. The way I use it is to build character sheets. So on character sheets for things like 5th edition, where you have your abilities, you also have a little box to say whether or not you're proficient with it, and the to-do lists are really handy for that. So if I had a strength option, I can click my little to-do and I can see that I am proficient with strength or strength saves. It's a really handy way to make character sheets and things like that. That's how I use it anyway. Next up, we have the info panel. Now the info panel will give a new panel in your article, and you've got a couple of different options. By default, you just get generic info, which is this blue color. You can type any information you want in there and it stands out on the page, but you can also change what style of information it is. So you can add a secret, which is the purple option here. You can add a little green check mark option, some sort of warning information, or this red option. This gives you a lot of flexibility in how you present the information. So if you were a dungeon master and you wanted to warn players that a particular area is really dangerous, or if you're a player in a West Marches game who's been to a location that's really dangerous and you have the option to edit the articles, you could put a warning right at the top. Use this one or this one right here, maybe this one, and you could type in there, we went here, we were 5 level 6 players, 2 people died, we barely managed to escape, here's what's inside it. And other players in your world could look at that and go, That's really cool. We're level 10. I think we can take that. Let's go there next week. It's a really nice way to deliver some contextual information on your page and just break things apart so it's not just one big wall of text. Then next up we have the quote option, which allows you to quote someone. So we can put this as a quote, and you can see that it ends up being distinct from the other text. Again, it's really handy to be able to see that difference as you're working. And then after quotes, we've got the secret. Now, the secrets are a really powerful tool, especially for dungeon masters. They allow you to create things that people can't see unless you give them the option to see. So I could create a page for Azim, put all the information that the players are aware of in that page, and then put the rest of the information within the secret. Now, inside the secret, I can still use some of the formatting options. I can add headers to my text. So if I put this here, I can add headers to my text, which allows me to break up my information. I can put tables in my secret notes, so I can have tables there. You can't put layouts in secrets, which is a little bit disappointing, but we can put images in secrets. So if I grab, again, this image and just put it in, I've got a secret image. So there's a lot of flexibility here for me as a dungeon master to be able to hide things from my players without having to have lots of different articles depending on what your setup is. I don't like having a huge number of places I have to go for my information. I want it all to be in one place. So I'd rather not have Azim and Secret Azim. It's easier to just put it all in one. And then after secrets, we have a couple of indexes. We've got subpage index, which will show all of the nested pages beneath an article, and table of contents. That pulls all of your headings from the page and gives you a table of contents, which is really handy. That's why you should be using headings. So you can go use a lot of text, put a table of contents at the top and click to it really, really easily. And then we've just got our heading options. So as you can see, and as I will show you as we go through this tutorial, you've got a lot of different formatting options now in LegendKeeper that didn't used to be there and that allow you to get the most out of the app. There's still a lot that I would like to see. Like I said, I'd really like to be able to shade my tables just to give some visual difference between the different rows, if nothing else. But what we've got at the moment is a really strong base to build off. So let's go over how you share this information with your players. So we're going to go off the Atlas and into the wiki. The wiki is where all of your articles get stored. Now you can see here that by default it will show me Azim because that's the last thing I was working on. But if we go over here, I've got LegendKeeper tutorial, which is my entire project. And then I can subdivide underneath that, and Azim is part of that world, so it by default goes there. I've got the option to add new articles down here, and I can choose what their parents are or whether to just make them top level articles. We're not going to do that right now. But you can see I can nest articles inside articles inside articles. I don't think that there is a limit on how much you can do this. So you've got a lot of flexibility. If I wanted to grab the Azim map and put a tavern on there, I could make an article for the tavern, I could make a map for the tavern. And then in that tavern, I could link to a secret map, maybe a basement, add another article, add another map, and on it goes. It's a really powerful way of navigating your world visually. But to change the permissions of an article is really simple. You've got two quick ways to do it. If we hover over Azim here, you can see two little icons appear. The first hides the article so only admins can see it. So if you've got something you don't want players seeing at all, you click that. Anyone that isn't an admin in the permissions that we set down here in this menu isn't going to be able to see this article. But if we click on the three dots, we can edit the permissions specifically for this article, and we can change which users can see what. We can't do it in groups, which is a little unfortunate. If you've got a particularly large group of people in a West Marches games, It would be nice to be able to group them all together, but we do have that granular level of detail here. So you can see Testy McTestface currently has the default member settings. So that means that they can view this article. But we've got a couple of different options that we can choose. We could choose to inherit the parent's permission. So if we didn't want them seeing Azim, and therefore didn't want them seeing the Great Bazaar, we could change the Great Bazaar so that it inherits it from Azim and the members can't see it. We can set it so that members can view individual articles under that. So if I had 2 locations in Azim and I only wanted them to be able to see one, I could do it like that. We have the option to allow members to edit an article. So if you've got some locations that you want the players to be able to go in and edit, you can do that. You've got the options to give members the ability to edit the permissions of the article as well, which promotes them to basically an admin. Or you've got the option to lock it so that the members can't see that article or any of its sub-articles. So there's a lot of flexibility here for you as a dungeon master specifically to be able to share your world with your players. If you're going to do this, I would highly recommend doing it from the start, because going back and trying to get all the permissions for 100+ articles is an absolute nightmare, just because it's a really time consuming and tedious task. But if you're getting started, I highly recommend you get those permissions set at the start so that you can share some information with your players. They can go browse the atlas, see the locations that they've been to. Maybe if you keep everything secret except for where they've been, and then you can slowly unravel this map before them. That would be really cool. Another feature of the wiki that I really like is that you can create your own categories. So if I create a new article here with no parent, we're just going to call it items. And we're going to change the glyph to be some crossed swords. And then we're going to do the same, and we're going to call it religion. And we're going to change the icon to just be some fire. Once we have a couple of different high-level categories, I can grab items, for example, and drag it up here to create a shortcut. And you can see that I can see all of my articles, or I can see the ones that are only in the item section. I can do the same for religion. If I click and drag up here, it puts it there. Do the same for my main world. Dragging is a little bit buggy. You don't always grab it. So what I do is go on the icon, hold down the left mouse, and just do it a little slowly. But you can see if I click up here, it will show me all the things that are underneath the LegendKeeper tutorial, the main world, everything that has that as its parent article. And that's a really good way to categorize all your things. I'll show you how I use this later on in the video, but it is a really handy way to separate out that information, because once you get a large world with a lot of articles, it can become a little bit overwhelming. The one thing that I would really like is you currently can only put, I believe, 5 icons up here. I would like to be able to put more. Ideally, I'd like this whole top section here, instead of showing you the location tree of the article, to just show me all those icons. It's, I think, a much better use of the real estate on the page, but for now, the 5 icons is a really good way to go. The last thing I want to cover before we dive into my world and I show you how I've got everything set up is the asset manager. So I click here and you can see that it brings up the dialogue for my maps and my images. Up top we've got 2 little toggles here, images and maps. Maps is obviously all the maps you've added. Images is anything that isn't a map. And what I like about this is that you can add collections. So I can add a collection down here, name it NPCs, and then it adds a section just for my NPCs. So I can add all the images of my NPCs to one section, which makes it easier to search through them. I can do the same with flavor images. So let's say I've got some images I want to use to set the tone. I can grab them from here. It just makes navigating your content much easier. And then when you're importing an image into one of your articles, you'll get this pop-up and you can click NPCs, click on the NPC, and it adds it directly. So then, how do I use LegendKeeper to world build? Well, I think that LegendKeeper is, for me, and the way that I approach world building, one of the best resources out there, because everything is quick and snappy and you can make things really fast, which is how I build my worlds. I go really quickly and I get as much wide scope as I can before I start dialing into everything and adding all the detail. I go wide first and then I go deep. So we're going to go and we're going to click on Azim here, go to the Azim map, and I'm going to give you a bit of an example of how I would world build in LegendKeeper. So your players are going to go to a new city. You've got to set up a new city. Setting up new locations can be a real chore, especially when you don't know what the players are going to interact with. So the approach that I take is to go super generic until the players look at it. So let's zoom in here and say that we want to create a tavern. Now, I don't know whether the players are going to go to this specific tavern, so I don't want to spend a lot of time coming up with a name, an NPC, and all that kind of information if the players are never going to interact with it. So what I want to do is I want to go to my wiki, and inside the LegendKeeper tutorial section, I'm going to click the 3 dots, and I'm going to click new. That'll create a nested article, and I'm going to call this generic locations. Create that, leave it inside there, go back to my map of Azim, and I'm going to right click. I'm going to add a new pin, and I'm going to create a new article. This new article is just going to be called tavern, but the parent for it is going to be generic locations and not Azim. We're going to change the icon to be beer, and we're going to change the pin. This is how I like to use my pins. I use the color of the pins to tell me about the location. So I always go this beigey gold color for generic locations. If it's a location the players have been to and it has a specific name and specific information, I change the color to a reddy orange. If it's a particular place of interest that I plan ahead of time, but that the players still might not go to, I make it purple, just so that when I'm looking at a whole map, I can see really easily what pins mean what. And the same with natural formations, like this river. All my rivers and oceans are blue. All my mountains and forests are green, things like that. But we have this generic tavern article. So I click that and you can see that I've got nothing. But I could then go in, and what I would do is I would add a list of generic tavern names to this. I would add a list of generic tavern keeper names to this. So that when the players go, I want to go to a tavern, and they are here in the Grand Bazaar, and they say, where's the closest tavern? And I say, oh, it's just a couple of blocks away. Oh, we'll go there then. Once they say they're going to go there, then I can grab my generic location and look at my lists. And I can pick a name out of my list of names, and I can pick an occupation, an NPC. And what I would then do is at the top here, I would write in Azim, and then let's call it the Setting Sun, run by Dax Hammermail, the Dwarf. I would add heading 2 to that, and then keep going. I don't need to create a completely separate article for the Setting Sun unless it becomes a really important location. If the players spend the night there and decide they're going to move in and live in the Setting Sun, then I'll move it to its own article. And I'd do that by highlighting it and clicking on the cutout section to a new article option. But for locations that they only visit briefly, like general stores or a lot of taverns, if they go to the gem cutters to pick up some diamond dust, they're probably not going to spend a huge amount of time there, so I don't want to spend a huge amount of time adding those locations. I want a generic list that I can pull from really quickly and then a way to categorize it. So if the players then went to Jabal, they might go to the Crested Lion, which is run by Mira the Half-Elf. I would again make Jabal heading 2. And then once I've got a couple of locations, I'd go up here and I would put in a table of contents. So a couple of months or a year down the line of this campaign, when they've been to dozens of locations and they say, right, okay, we're going to go back to Azim. What was the name of that tavern that we stayed in? I grab the Azim map, I click on one of the generic tavern articles and I hit Azim, and it will take me down the page and I'll be able to see which of the taverns they've been to. Oh, you went to the Setting Sun. Remember, it was run by Dax Hammermail, the dwarf? Oh yeah, of course. And this is a really good way to both speed up your world building and to also not waste time with world building, because a common criticism that people levy against world building is that it wastes a lot of time. There's a lot of things that your players never encounter, which is true, or can be true, if you spend a lot of time on micro details for things you don't need to. I much prefer to get a generic list and then update it over time like this. So let's dive into one of my existing worlds and I will give you a bit of a tour. If you are a player in my game, now is the time to stop watching this, because there will be spoilers ahead and you will ruin the game for yourself. So stop watching here. Everything before here is fine, but from here, no, spoilers. So we're going to click up here on the LegendKeeper option and I'm going to select Ashk. Now you can see just how much I've got on this map straight away. I have got dozens of locations, icons, areas of interest all over the map. And what I've done here is followed that same kind of approach that I was just talking about, that generic-led approach. So before I started this game, I had a strong idea of the city-states, these orangey red icons. I have information for them. They are set in stone. But all the little towns that the players might come to, they aren't the main focus of the game. The city-states and the wilderness are the focus, not these little towns. But I still wanted to add some. So they're all these little beige icons. So if my players wanted to travel from Jabal to Mahit and they wanted to stop in a town, they're likely going to come across Tyre. Now, all of these are just generic towns that I made in the generator on Kassoon, which I talked about in my 10,000 subscriber video. I'll link that down in the description below. That's a really good example, and I use LegendKeeper in that to build a world really quickly. But I could say to them, right, okay, you head out of Jabal and about 3 days into your journey, you come across the village of Tyre. It's sat on the Tharian River. You can see that I've already added the river icon, and then you move through. If I click on Tyre, you can see that it loads up a bunch of information that I got from that Kassoon generator. I haven't looked at this since I put it in there. I don't know what's in Tyre, and I might not use any of this information. But in a pinch, if the players suddenly decide, right, we're leaving Jabal, we're going to go to Mahit, off we go. We're not going to do the thing that you've spent 2 hours this week prepping, off we go. What's the first town we come across? I'm not completely disarmed by it. I know that there is a generic town there. I can open up the article for Tyre and see it's built around a large fortress known for having high fashion, the rulers fair and just and respected by the populace. The races live together and mostly in harmony. That is all just generated from Kassoon. So I tell them that. I say this is a river village. There was a fort on the river. The village has built up around it. The fort's fallen into a bit of disrepair now. There's a lot of river trade here. I can use the contextual information of the world. So it's right next to the Sea of Sand, which means it will be raided heavily. So it might be a walled little town or village. That's probably why the fort was there. And I can use the information of the wider world to inform me about the generic location. Clicking around here, you can see that, for example, Azim, I've got a big old list of the different NPCs that I made in one of my world building videos. In my Making a Homebrew campaign session, I will link to that up here. That's why Azim has got so many NPCs. None of the other locations have. All the other locations use that generic list option that I talked about earlier on. So you can see that I've got a lot of different pins on my map here. The reddy orange ones are my city states. Those are the main locations in the game. These goldy coloured ones, those are just my small little towns that I've dotted around just to add a bit more interest to the world. These green ones are natural formations such as mountains or forests. The blue ones are any waterway, so rivers, lakes, anything like that. And then these purple ones, the purple ones are my areas of interest. Those might be a town, they might be a monument or a dungeon. You can see here that we've got the Tomb of the Jade Tyrant, which was the first adventure in my new campaign. I've got a whole campaign diary series that you can follow along with if you want to know what happened in the Tomb of the Jade Tyrant. But if I click on that, it brings up the information for the Tomb of the Jade Tyrant, brings up the map for the dungeon so I can see what the players were doing in the map, and I can browse that without having to leave the atlas. So if I were talking to the players, they're currently in Azim, and they said, what was going on in the Tomb of the Jade Tyrant? There was that room. It was the last room we went in. What was in there? I know that it was this room here. I was like, it was a church. There was a hole in the floor and wall. Everything was barricaded in there. They go, oh yeah, okay, I remember now. Same with the other locations. So let's say they wanted to go to the Sackville mine. And they say, right, how far away is the Sackville mine? Well, because my map has got a grid on it, I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days away. In the future, LegendKeeper does have a roadmap, and there is a plan for a distance tracker to be added to the atlas, which will be really handy. But for now, using a grid on my map does the job. I can say, Sackville mine, 6 days away. I can click on Sackville mine. Any information I've got on the mine will come up and I can tell the players about it. I don't currently have any information about it because I haven't prepped that session yet. But you can see that this is a really useful way to run quite an open sandbox world type game. I basically put my players in the world and said, you've gathered together to go to the Tomb of the Jade Tyrant. After that, it's on you. You go where you want. Here are a couple of different locations you might know about. So they know about all of the city-states, and a couple of them know a few other locations. And I basically just said, choose where you go, make your own adventures. And LegendKeeper makes that much easier than any other option that I've found. I couldn't do this in OneNote. It doesn't have a robust enough map tool. Trying to do this within Fantasy Grounds, which is what I used to run the game, would be a UI nightmare. And World Anvil, for example, has an atlas tool, which I could use, but making articles in World Anvil is really time consuming. There's a lot of granular detail. You can create quick articles, but I prefer to just have the default be my quick option and just go and world build rather than getting stuck in the weeds on lots of nitty-gritty details. So let's take a look at my DM screen and how I've set up LegendKeeper to benefit me. So I'll go over here to the wiki, and you can see that it is defaulted onto my DM screen. Top left here, I've got several different categories. I've got the rules, information about Ashk, my Pantheon, all the information on my adventures, and my calendar. But you can see here in my calendar option, I've got a couple of different articles in the side here. I've got an article on timekeeping and how people in a medieval world kept time, several articles on the different ages of the world, information on different holidays, and I've just got an overview of the calendar here as an image. But if I click on 1159 here, that's the current year in my game, you can see we've got a bunch of different tabs. So if I click here, I can add tabs to my pages. This is another really handy tool to be able to get more information to a page. But I've got all the months of the year so far set up, starting with Calor, which is the month the players started the game in. I click Calor and I've got a table here, and this table shows me what the day of the month is, what actual day of the week is, what the session number is, what my session date is, which of the players were in attendance, and the notes of everything that happened. So this is how I log my campaign. So I have this page open all the time when I'm running the game, and as the players go through and do things, I make notes in this calendar. So if they fought a Ankeg, I'd be like, right, fight Ankeg. You can see down here, this is how I would usually do it in the middle of a game. Leave tool, Crass goes back to Sinir. First rest, they hear distant horns. Short little sentences of the broad strokes of what they've been doing, and then afterwards I go back in and I flesh that out. I add context to all those notes, I build it out so that when I'm referencing back to it, I've got all the information I need. And the tabs mean I can quickly move between the different months of the year without having to go to different articles, which is just how I prefer to do it. So before we finish, I will show off my DM screen. It's the DM screen that kept me from jumping over to LegendKeeper before the Fates update. If I switch over to OneNote, you can see this is how I've got my OneNote DM screen set up. 3 columns, all with expandable information that I can access as I need it. So if the players say, how much does a potion of superior healing heal? I can go over to the rules reference area, click healing, and I can be like, right, it does 8d4 plus 8. And it allows me to keep a huge amount of information in a very tight space. So I've got tables for character advancement. I've got all of the bounded accuracy tables that I made to show the percentile chance of success for any DC versus bonus number, which doesn't come up super often but is really handy. I've got magic item pricing, conditions and states, which is something I need all the time because I'm always forgetting what different conditions do. They're all there. Everything is referenced with the book number so that if I want to grab one of the books off my shelf and see the full context of a rule, I can do that. If I go up to monsters, I have everything in my SRD list from D&D Beyond linked so I can grab some monsters really quickly. And this has served me really well for probably 6-9 months at this point. It gives me far more information than I could ever have on an actual DM screen. I use the reincarnated DM screen and I have jam-packed this. Sorry for that. I have jam-packed this with information so you can see that I've put stickers of stuck different information pretty much all over every part of this screen, including on the front. I have information on what actions you can do, information on resting and death saving throws for the players on the front. But even that isn't everything that I would need. Whereas with this option, I can have a laptop, or I can have a tablet, or I could even have my phone, and I have pretty much absolutely everything that I could want to reference from a rules standpoint at my fingertips. And that's why it took me so long to fully jump over to LegendKeeper, because previously LegendKeeper just did not support this density of information in a way that was easy to browse. Until Fates came along. With Fates, and the layout options specifically, I can achieve the same result. And arguably, I can do it better, because one of the really big benefits of LegendKeeper is that when you link an article in a body of text, it creates a link that you can hover over and it opens up a browsable page, which means that I can nest incredible amounts of information and not change the amount of page that I'm looking at. I can bring up this actions in combat, which is a massive page on its own, but it doesn't shove everything else down the page because I've expanded it like it would in OneNote. I can then go over to travel pace and see what travel pace is, or go over to healing and see what healing is. You can see at the top here, I keep information on all the characters, which is linked to their character sheet, so I can see what their information is on their character sheet really easily. And I also track their kills, how many times they've gone to 0 HP, if they've died, how many sessions they've attended. These are things that I track just to be able to, at the end of a campaign, give my players some stats, because I really like stats. So I can say, over the course of the campaign, you killed 300 monsters. Over the course of the campaign, Hyena was the one that went down the most. Over the course of the campaign, Yui had the most kills. That kind of thing. It's just nice at the end of a campaign to be able to give some information. Kind of like in old video games where you'd finish and it'd tell you some stats, how far you'd travelled, how many bullets you'd shot, that kind of thing. But on the actual DM screen itself, I have a load of generic names in an expandable block and link to other pages. So I can grab a huge list of tiefling names, halfling names, elf names, dwarf names, any names I need. Human names, the same. I've got that set up in more expandable blocks that I can expand within my DM screen without having to change the page. I can see a load of different human names for the region, and then I can close that up when I don't need it. And then I've got all of these different things linked. If I want to see them individually, I can click on them and go to the article, but most of the time I just hover, find the information I need, click away. I've not left my DM screen. I've still got all of that information there. And this has been game changing in terms of LegendKeeper. Since the Fates update, I have used LegendKeeper every single week to plan my sessions, to run my sessions, and to build my world. There are still some things that I prefer in OneNote, being able to move items around the page any way I want, being able to color text, color tables, and have that richer formatting option is still really nice. But from a linkability point of view, from being able to go, right, I need to know about this character, I can just link them and click on them really easily. LegendKeeper is awesome, and I've really been enjoying it. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and click subscribe if you're new here. If you want to see how I build my homebrew worlds, including building out Ash, I've got an entire playlist on making a homebrew campaign, which you can see just over there. But until next time, happy gaming.